hemorrhaging weasels. Alright, so check this out. Have you ever taken a photograph or needed to take a photograph at a high ISO and then been completely disappointed in the large amount of noise from your camera sensor? Well, who the f*** hasn't? I mean, I guess I could think of a few people. People who aren't photographers or just don't take pictures at all in general. But f*** it, here we go. From our original image here, with more noise than SpongeBob SquarePants on Adderall, we're going to pull noise out to reveal a much nicer, much cleaner image. Now, I took this collection of shitty, noisy photos at an ISO setting of 409,600 on my Sony a7S. The noise in this kind of resembles the texture of reheated macaroni and cheese. Probably one of the worst things around, and nobody wants that. But we're going to get rid of that, so it's the fresh mac and cheese that everybody loves. Now, there are multiple reasons as to why you may want to use this technique. One of the reasons being the relief of a forgotten tripod or simply not having one to work with. So, coupled with burst mode, without a tripod and using a steady hand, you'll be able to capture some great night and low light photos. Your high ISO setting helps you achieve a fast shutter speed in lower light situations. For this tutorial, I shot this handheld in a low lit area just to simulate any bit of camera tilting or movement in other handheld situations that you might face. First, you'll want to make sure that you have your images taken at the highest ISO your camera is capable of, at least for this tutorial. After this tutorial, it's pretty flexible. I just want you to push your camera as much as you can right now to see what it can be capable of. You can do this either handheld or on a tripod. As I said for this tutorial, I did it handheld just to replicate the worst possible scenario you might run into. I mean, other than, of course, falling through a floor or getting attacked by some crazy dog, which actually happened while exploring North Carolina. In case you don't have any photos, I've provided these photos in a link below for you to follow along. Digital noise is made up of bits of randomly generated pixels within an image, appearing due to a low signal-to-noise ratio. You can think of a higher ISO setting acting sort of like an artificial gain for light. The sensor flips its shit and throws up a bunch of discoloration all over the place. Since these noise pixels are randomly generated, this means that every image has a different noise pattern than the last. They're like snowflakes. Colorful, vomit-covered snowflakes. There are many variables to what affects the amount of noise, from sensor size to actual lighting of the particular scene, shutter speed, and so on. But for purpose of not dragging this tutorial on for an hour, we won't get deep into this. Feel free to discuss in the comments below, though. I'm going to start this tutorial with 17 photos of this bag of nuts, taken at ISO 409,000 on a Sony a7S at 1/8,000th of a second, and an aperture of 7.1. Alright, we start by loading the images into Photoshop, but a little bit differently than we normally would. We don't just go to File, Open, or just drag and drop them. We're actually going to come up to File, go down to Scripts, and load files into Stack. Now, once we get this, we have this little Load Layers dialog that pops up. We're going to go to Browse, and we're going to locate the images, navigate to wherever you have the images saved on your computer, select all of them that you're going to use, and we're just going to hit open. In this dialog box now, we're going to make sure that we hit attempt to automatically align the source images just for, if you took this handheld and you have a little bit of shake or tilt, it'll attempt to automatically align them as well as it can. We're going to create a smart object after loading the layers, and we're just going to hit OK. Now that the photos are completely loaded up, you can see that down here they are loaded into one smart object. All the layers, all the photos, they are all laying right in here. Over here you'll see that Photoshop tried to correct some of the tilting that I had since I did this handheld. What we're going to do for the next step is we're going to come up to here in Layer, find Smart Objects down here, and come down to Stack Mode. When we come down to Stack Mode, you get all these options. We're going to choose Mean, meaning the same as it would mathematically, taking the average. And what Photoshop does here is it analyzes all of the images and it finds all of the varying pixels, I guess you could say, to replace them with darker pixels, sort of healing the darker, noisier sections of the photo and any other noisy areas. Now, as you can see, our image is processed and we get a little bit of magenta here. We still have some noise in the image, but I took this at 409,000 ISO, which I don't know why you would ever want to actually push your camera all the way up like that. But I'm pushing this to the complete extremes for sake of this tutorial. So once this is done, you can actually come up here to layer and then flatten the image. Do any necessary cropping. So I'll just do it, I don't know, whatever. To further this effect, getting rid of some of these magenta parts, which is what you'll see with a lot of noisy images, we can actually just come up here, image adjustments, hue saturation, or you can do your adjustment layer with your hue and saturation. And then find the magenta channel and just start taking some of that out. And I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but you can come in the reds even and start taking some of that out. Now sometimes this might not be desirable because you want some of the reds in there. Like in this case, I'd probably want to keep some of these reds. And maybe even some of the magentas, I don't know. And obviously the color is not the greatest on this either, but like I said, it's at 409,000 and taken in a dimly lit room. I didn't even pay attention to the white balance, so this is more or less to just show you how to get rid of the noise. To further this effect even further, Nick has, well, Google bought the Nick plugins, which you'll see down here, the HDR Effects Pro 2, Viveza, however you pronounce that, 2, Define 2, Analog Effects, all that, which you can actually go and download for free now from Google, because after Google bought them, they offered them up for free. Sometimes I like to come in here and use the Define tool. I just use Define 2, and it'll analyze the image for any noise, and it does a decent job. It doesn't make it too soft, and you can further adjust it to your own personal taste. Then we can come over here and use another plugin that they have, and obviously these aren't completely necessary to do. You can use other techniques that you might have, but I like using Output Sharpener and just adding a teeny tiny little bit of sharpness to it. Now this is a complete extreme, so it's not the greatest looking image, but going from what it did look to how it looks now, you'll see an insane difference. If I view my history over here, you see that we went from an image like this to an image like this, which is an incredible change. That's all for this tutorial. Just a fun little way that you can get rid of some noise in your photos to an extreme extent. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more tutorials. Like I said, I'll be posting 1 to 2 tutorials on this channel per week around the same time. So I hope to see you around the same time next week.